Morning.
Morning, morning, Shmuley. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. You too. Okay, today today's class is dedicated in memory of Shoshana Sarah Bat Avraham. By Denise asked, it's the yahrzeit today for Shoshana Sarah Bat Avraham, and because it's a yahrzeit, they're dedicating the class and the learning that we're doing today should be for Eli Neshama, and Neshama should rise and go up higher and higher. Okay, good morning, everybody. We are on Lamed Omer Aleph. We are on 30a. We are at a new Mishnah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. You know, this is the famous Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that we're going to have soon in Pesach in Haggadah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. Hari ani kiven shivin shana. Good morning, Aaron. On the thing. Thank you so much. I am like 70 years old and I wasn't able to prove the mitzvah of saying you have an obligation to mention Yetziat Mitzrayim by day and by night. Remember, that's what we're going to have in the Haggadah. And here's another Mishnah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. This is the Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that we had earlier that became the Nasi when Rabbi Gamliel had to step down from the position of Nasi, of the head of the Jewish community. And he stepped down. He had to step down for a short period of time. And then he came back. And then we said, who was the interim leader? It was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And that great rabbi. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. Now we're discussing now, as you know, the Perek discusses the prayers. So the name of the Perek is Tfilat HaShachar. It's about praying Shachrit, about praying in the morning prayer, and so on and so forth. And obviously, we went on to talk about all different types of prayers, different situations. The Mishnah spoke about, is there a short version is appropriate at certain times or not? We had a whole discussion of a person's in a place of sakana, person's in great danger, what the law is, what's the appropriate prayer in a case of danger, and so on and so forth. Then we went on to Tfilat HaDerech, when a person's traveling, in the special mitzvah, a certain prayer you need to pray when you travel, and in certain circumstances you are obligated to pray that prayer when you're traveling, and you have to be careful on top of your game. And we spoke about a lot of the laws about that. And now we're talking about the laws of the Tfilat Musaf. We're talking about the laws of praying Musaf. As you know, Musaf, the word Musaf means extra, additional, right? Like the Torah says, lo sosif. The Torah says, when it comes to the law of malkut, to the law of lashes, the Torah says you give 39 lashes to someone who violated certain mitzvot intentionally, and he was warned, and he did it in front of witnesses. The Torah says, lo sosif. Don't give him an extra one for good luck, so to speak. You're not allowed to give an extra one, an extra malkut. It's 39, and that's it. Not one above 39. The Torah gives a prohibition, and we learn out from there also that you can't go ahead if you hit somebody. If a person hits another person, he violates the Torah, because the Torah says even someone who was rasha, someone who acted so inappropriately, he violated the Torah willingly, and he gets lashes. Yet the Torah says you're not allowed to give him an extra one. So certainly another Jew who was not worthy of lashes, certainly we're not allowed to go ahead and hit him. Therefore, this would be a source for being, if a person gets physical with another person, he violates the lo saseh of the Torah. So here, the idea of musaf means extra. There's an extra. Why is musaf called musaf? Because of the extra kabbanot. The extra kabbanot, the extra offerings that are brought on the day of Rosh Shabbat, on Rosh Chodesh, on Yom Tov. Those are days where there's the Karban Musaf. Because of the greatness of the day, Hashem commanded that there should be special karbanot, additional karbanot. And because of the special additional karbanot, the Chachamim said that we should pray a prayer corresponding to the Karban Musaf. And therefore, the similar that we pray Shachrit, one of the ideas of the morning prayer is to pray, of course, to pray, but also it's corresponding, as we know, the time of the prayer is connected to the time of the bringing of the korban, of the offering in the morning. The korban, there was a korban offering of the korban in the morning and a korban in the afternoon. So being on Shabbat or Yom Tov, there's an extra korbanot, so therefore there's an extra tefillah. That's called the korban musaf. Well, today we don't have the korban musaf because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. We have the tefillat musaf. We have the prayer of musaf. Now there seems to be a question. There's a great question: is what when the rabbis instituted musaf? What is the background? What conditions need to be met? Do they require to have a minyan in order to pray musaf? Would you be able to pray musaf alone as a yochid by yourself? And the obvious question would be, why would this be different than any other tefillah? We know the other tefillot, the other prayers, we know a person is supposed to try very hard to pray with the minyan, and the halacha, there's laws exactly how far you got to go out of your way in order to go to pray with a minyan. And so why should be what should be different when it comes to musaf? Why should musaf? Morning,
Morning,
Yosef.
Rabbi.
Why should musaf be any different than shachrit? Nobody has a question whether you should pray shachrit biyachid. If a person's alone, he finds himself in Tannersville or he finds himself in Woodstock, and there's no minyan in the neighborhood, nobody's going to say he shouldn't pray shachrit. Everybody's going to say he should pray shachrit. So what's the discussion? What's the question regarding musaf? So I saw that, number one, the prayer of musaf is really coming for the korban. That's really what it's all about. The korban, as we said earlier, because of the additional korban, therefore they instituted this prayer. Every other prayer, when it comes to shachrit or mincha, it's not just coming for the korban. There's a concept that it's also coming for the sake of itself, that of prayer for itself. Everybody has certain needs, and everyone needs rachamim. Everyone needs help, right? So therefore, the point of the prayer is, in a certain sense, independent of the korban. So, like the Gemara said earlier on Chavav and Aleph, the Gemara had the question of, if a guy missed mincha, does he make it up at Arvit, right? And the Gemara, and what was the two sides to the coin? The Gemara says, because on the one hand, once mincha passes, if you miss mincha, the day is over. So the day is over. The korban, maybe you should say it's like, the day of, you can't bring the korban anymore. The day is over. So maybe the prayer is gone. On the other side of the coin is, even though it's true you can't bring a korban once the day is over, it's over. The korban is finished. You have to wait till the next day. But the point of the prayer is also to ask for mercy. So if I didn't ask for mercy by mincha, I should make up to ask for mercy at Arvit, and that's the halacha. That if you miss mincha, you will make it up at Arvit. So too over here. So when it comes to shachrit or mincha, where the point of the prayer is not just for the point of the korban, it's also independently my own personal need, that it's coming to bring out my personal needs. So therefore, my personal needs, whether I'm in a minyan or not with a minyan, I should have to go ahead and pray that prayer. However, when it comes to musaf, the musaf is really something specifically because of the korban, and like we said, if you miss musaf, you don't make it up by arvit. You don't make up. It's not because what are you making up? The korban is over. The main point is you missed the korban, and you can't. If you miss the korban in the afternoon, the day, you can't make up the korban a day at night. So therefore, we go ahead and we don't make up the musaf. We make up mincha. So therefore, that's the question here in the Gemara. We just want to welcome Dennis, Denise, that we want to welcome that has joined. So that's the Gemara's question. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Rabbi Elazar says we have the Mishnah. The Mishnah is on 6 lines from the bottom on Lamed Omer Aleph. We welcome Denise, who's joined the class, which is dedicated in memory of Shoshana Sarah Bat Avraham. It's her yahrzeit, so everyone keep that in mind. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says in the Mishnah, Ein tfilat hamusafim ele b'chave'ir. The musaf is only b'chave'ir. B'chave'ir means with the minyan. If there's no minyan, you will not pray the musaf. Now, remember, the musaf korban was a communal responsibility, that the community would have a responsibility to bring this korban. And therefore, since it's a responsibility on the community, therefore, when you have a community which is a minyan, 10 people represent a community of some sort, as you know, a minyan. You're able to pray a minyan. It's you can able to pray minyan. You can say kaddish and so on and so forth. So therefore, since the musaf karban was a responsibility on the community, it was something done as a communal project. So therefore, if you do not have a minyan, if you don't have 10 people, you don't have the community. So therefore, this opinion says you do not pray musaf. In contrast to shachrit, where it's not only the idea of a communal, representing a communal idea. The shachrit is the individual personal needs as well. So therefore, however, the Chachamim disagree. The Chachamim say b'chave'ir v'shelo b'chave'ir. The Chachamim say that you could go ahead and say musaf and pray musaf whether you have a minyan or whether you don't have a minyan. Whether you're praying by yourself, a person finds himself in his home during the pandemic and he's not able to go to the synagogue on Shabbat. If that would be the case, thank God many places are available to go today. But if that would be the case, or if a person is not well and he has to pray by himself, so the Chacham say you will also pray the musaf by yourself as well. Meaning to say the Rabbi Chacham are of the opinion that when the rabbis instituted the musaf, which is the Anshe Knesset Gdolah, the rabbis of the Great Assembly instituted musaf, they instituted with the similar laws of Shachrit and Mincha. The same way Shachrit and Mincha, if you don't have a minyan, you still pray it. So too musaf, they said the same thing. Even though musaf was something, the karban came as a communal responsibility and so on and so forth, and it came mainly, and the point of the musaf was mainly for the, it was the karban, and that's the main point of the praying of the musaf. But they gave it similar laws of shachrit and mincha. They did not separate musaf from mincha and shachrit, and you can be able to pray musaf by yourself as well. That's the opinion of Chachamim, and we'll see that's going to be the halacha. Now, I just think, even though the halacha does not follow Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, but the fact that there is such an opinion that says that you would require a minyan for musaf, I think should give us a certain feeling and appreciation of the importance of the power of a minyan, that goes so far that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that if you're not at a minyan, you cannot pray musaf. That's his understanding how the power of minyan is. Rabbi Yehuda Mishmo, however, the Gemara records that Rabbi Yehuda said in the name Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Kol makom sheyish sham chave'ir, wherever you have a minyan, yochid patur mitfilas hamusafim. If there is a minyan in that city, the individual does not have to pray if he's alone. If he doesn't have, if there's a minyan, then the yachid is patur from praying musaf. So we'll have to see what does that mean, that if there's a minyan, that the yachid is exempt from praying the
Yeah,
Musaf.
it's very not clear. It sounds like if my city there is a minyan and somebody like I live in the city, but I don't go to minyan for whatever reasons, I don't have to do the musaf.
So let's see what the Gemara is going to explain. Let's real simple. We're going to try to address your question. The first opinion in the Mishnah is very clear. The first opinion says you need a minyan in order to daven musaf. You need a minyan. And this last opinion that says that if there's a minyan, if there's a minyan in town, which sounds like this: if there's a minyan in town and you are an individual and you're at home, correct? You're at home. There's a minyan in town. You are patur from saying tfilat musaf. According to this opinion, it's not the halacha. The halacha is if there's a minyan in town and you're at home, you have to still say musaf. But this opinion says if there's a minyan in town and you're at home, you do not, that's the case that you will not pray musaf. You hear what he's saying? That when will you be exempt from musaf, according to this opinion? Only if there's a minyan in town and they're praying and you're alone, so then you're covered. But if there's no minyan in town and you're alone, so this opinion would say you would have to pray musaf.
What's the sense in that? It doesn't make sense.
What's the sense? I presume the sense is that we're not, if really we want the musaf to be with a minyan. The sense of this opinion would be we want the musaf to be with a minyan. That's the way it's supposed. That's the really it's supposed to be. So if the community has a minyan, the community has a minyan for musaf, and you're not at that minyan, you will not say musaf because the community is covered. This community is covered because you have
But Rabbi, I'm sorry
Yes.
to cut you off again, but one town, there's not always one community. So,
but we're talking about, you think about the old communities. You had a lot of communities had one synagogue for the community, so to speak. Now there are certain towns that have many synagogues, but if that town has many synagogues, as long as this town, what's called a town, similar to Tfilat HaDerech, most probably that we learned earlier. When the houses stop and there's no, after a certain space, if there's no houses anymore, and you're out of town, you're in a new neighborhood, right? After there's a certain amount of distance that separates this town from the other town, they're not connected. So it's a new town. Every town is its own town. So therefore, the Gemara is saying, according to this opinion, that if your town has a minyan for musaf, if you find yourself in the synagogue, that's where you pray with that minyan musaf. Because musaf really, ideally, should be done with a minyan, because it's more of a communal. It's about the karban, which is more of a communal thing, which is more responsibility in the community. However, if you're not at the shul and in the town is saying musaf, you don't say the musaf because you're not there. You're not with the community. The community is saying it. But if the community is not saying it at all, so this opinion holds, and that's going to be this third opinion is arguing on the first opinion. This opinion is like an in-between opinion. He says it depends if there is a minyan. If there's a minyan in the community, the individual who's alone in their house will not pray musaf. However, if there's no minyan in the community, then he will pray musaf. You will see, Yosef, we're going to see the Gemara play it out. Let's see how the Gemara is going to explain this point, Yosef. So stay tuned and look at the Gemara for a second. The Gemara says the following. The Gemara's first question is, Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara asks, Rabbi Yehuda Hainu Tanakama. The third opinion of the Mishnah seems to be saying, if you look at it superficially, at first glance, they seem to be saying the similar thing, They both seem to be saying the idea of a minyan. You need a minyan for musaf. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, "Ain't tefillat musafim ela b'chaveir." You need to have a minyan. And the third opinion, Rabbi Yehuda says, in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, when there's a minyan, the yochid, the individual, doesn't say, which will also seem to say that you need to have a minyan in order to say the musaf. So the Gemara says, but I already gave you the answer because to address Yosef's question when he asked it on the Mishnah, meaning the Gemara again, the Gemara's question is, it seems to be that the last opinion of the Mishnah is repeating the first opinion on the Mishnah. And the Gemara says that can't be. As you know, it's recording as 3 opinions in the Mishnah. So opinion number 3 cannot be saying what opinion number 1 says. He must be saying something different. But that's what the Gemara is. So the Gemara answers, the difference would be a yochid if there's an individual, but he does not, but there's no minyan in that neighborhood. Tanakama Sava, the Tanakama holds patur. He says you're patur. You're patur if there's no minyan. The individual is patur. However, Rabbi Yehuda holds you would be chayav. Rabbi Yehuda holds you would be chayav. If there's no minyan in town, then the individual who's home alone will have to go ahead and pray. And in a certain sense, Rashi seems to say that it's an interesting concept that you could be home and they're praying musaf in the shul. According to this opinion, the Chazan, when he prays the musaf, he'll cover you. He'll cover you. That's the tzibur, even though you're not there, even though you didn't hear it, but he says it. The Chazan says musaf. He repeats the musaf. And that repetition of the musaf will cover the person who did not come to the synagogue. That's this phenomenon. That's the reason for this opinion. So the Gemara says, Omar Rav Huna Bar Chanina Omar Rav Chia bar Rav. Now we have 3 opinions in the Mishnah. So the Gemara wants to tell us, who does the law follow? So he says, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda she'omar mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He says the law follows Rabbi Yehuda that says in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. That says, what does Rabbi Yehuda say, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? That's the last opinion of the Mishnah. And only if you have a minyan in the synagogue would the individual at home be covered through the Chazan's repetition of the musaf. However, if there's no minyan in the town, and people should be living in a town that there's a minyan. If you find yourself in a town that there's no minyan, then the law would be that you are not covered. There's no one in the town covering you, and therefore you would have to pray your own musaf. That's this opinion. But again, like we said before, the law does not follow this. The law in la halacha l'maaseh is if you find yourself in your home, and even if you have a synagogue that's praying musaf, you have to pray your own musaf. And the Gemara continues. Amar le Rav Chia bar Ravin. Rav Chia bar Ravin says to Rav Huna, Shapir ka'amra. What you said, your report of the law, is a very sound, strong report of the law. The Amar Shmuel, because Shmuel, the great Shmuel, is one of the great Amoraim. You know, we have in the Gemara Rav Shmuel. They argue a lot. We have Shmuel on the screen. You know, he has the name Shmuel. You know, I don't know that he's named after Shmuel HaNavi, but also the name also has connected to that name Shmuel HaNavi. But here is the Rabbi Shmuel. The Amar Shmuel. Miyomai lo matzlina slosa de musaf b'yachid. I never prayed musaf alone by myself bin Harda, in the city of Narda, because Narda was a big city, bustling city, and in Babylon and Bavel. So there was always a minyan. So if for any reason I was not at the minyan, I would not pray myself because I would be covered with the chazan. That was his opinion. Leba mahu yoma. But there was an exception. There was that day the asa tumusa de malka lemata. The army of the king came to the city. Now, when the army of the king comes to the city, it's very nerve-wracking, great concern, so to speak. And what happened was the treated Rabbanan v'lo, and they disturbed the rabbis. The rabbis weren't able to pray with the minyan. There was no minyan that day because of all the confusion that was going on as a result of the army. V'tzali li biyachid. And then I prayed alone. That was the only time that I prayed alone. V'havi yachid shelo b'chavir, because I was a yachid. I was an individual in a place where there was no minyan, because nobody was praying that day. That's what Shmuel says about himself. And therefore, so we see that that's like the third opinion of the Mishnah, like Rabbi Yehuda in the name Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that the individual alone will only play musaf in the privacy of his home, or wherever he is alone, only when there's no minyan in town. But if there's a minyan in town, the individual will be covered with the chazan. Now, Yos, the Gemara continues. Yos, everybody hears it? Is it clear? Everybody hears it? Shmuel, Avram, Yosef, Ernest, Denise, everybody has it clear?
Yes, Rabbi.
Okay, we want to make sure it's very clear. Yotiv Rav Chanina. Rav Chanina was sitting, Kora Kamed Rav Yanai. And he was reading in front of Rav Yanai. V'yativ ka'amar. And what did he say? Halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda she'amar Shem Rav Elazar ben Azariah. So similarly, he said, meaning we say Rav Chanina, Yosef Rav Chanina Kara. Rav Chanina was called the Kara. Why was he called the Kara? Kara means he was the Baal HaMikra. He was the master of reading the Torah. He was an expert in the different melody sounds that when you read the Torah, the ta'amim and so on and so forth, he knew how to read it. He was the expert. So therefore, he's called Rav Chanina Kara. He's called Rav Chanina, not that Rav Chanina called in front of, rather this is referring to the name of Rav Chanina. Yativ Rav Chanina Kara. Rav Chanina, like you have sometimes Rav Yehuda Nafcha, Yehuda someone the blacksmith or whatever. He is called the Kara because of his expertise. Yativ Rav Chanina Kara. Rav Chanina, the expert in the Chumash or Tanakh, he was sitting Kamei de Rav Yanai. He was sitting in front of Rav Yanai. V'yativ kama, and he said, Halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda. The law follows Rabbi Yehuda she'ama mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The law follows that opinion that if you're alone and there's no minyan in town, then you pray musaf. But if there's a minyan in town and you're alone, you will not pray musaf. That's what he records. Amalei, Rav Yanai was not happy with that report. Pro puk, go out, pro karech lebara. Read your psukim outside, so to speak. Meaning your text, what you're saying, you're giving this report, and you're saying that the law follows Rabbi Yehuda, the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. It's not so. The ein halacha to Rabbi Yehuda she'amar mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The law does not follow that way. The law, you're not allowed to go ahead. You're not exempt from, good to see you, Shmuley, good to see you, Avram. So you're not exempt from musaf if you're alone and there's a minyan in the synagogue. No, the Chazan does not cover you. The Gemara says, Omer Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Ani ra'iti. I saw as Rav Yanai. I saw Rav Yanai did saleh v'hadid saleh. I saw that Rav Yanai, he prayed, he was praying alone. He was praying alone. What was he praying alone? He prayed Shachrit, and then he went ahead and he prayed Musaf alone. Yachid, even though there was a minyan in the town, so it proves that even by yourself, when you're alone, you still pray Musaf. You don't say that the Chazan of the synagogue covers you and you're exempt for saying the Musaf. Because I saw Rav Yanai, for whatever reason, he wasn't able to make it to the synagogue. Maybe he was very old or whatever the case was. And I saw that he prayed twice. He prayed Shachrit. He prayed twice. So what was he praying twice? So Rashi says, if he was praying twice, the point of the Gemara is, why should a person, let's say it was Shabbat morning. Why is he praying twice on Shabbat morning by himself? Obviously, because you're praying twice, because you pray Shachrit, one for Shachrit and one for Musaf. So we see he does not hold like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He says, even by Yachid, even if you're alone, and even if it's a Chazan in Shul, you still pray your Musaf. So, Amalei Rav Yirmiyah l'Rav Zera. So Rav Yirmiyah says to Rav Zera, maybe that's not a good proof. Meaning, when you want to bring a proof based on what you saw, but you did not speak to the rabbi, you did not ask him what was the reason why he did it. You're speculating. You know, I once had a meeting with Rav Pam, Zecher Tzaddik Livrocha, the Rashiva of Torah Das, a number of years ago. And he taught me a big lesson. I was speaking to him, and he said one word that really made a great impression on me. He told me that's speculation. A lot of times people think things are a certain way, but they have to recognize what's a fact and what's speculation. Your speculation could be right, but you have to know it's speculation. So that's what the Gemara is saying. You saw the rabbi pray 2 prayers on Shabbat morning by himself in the privacy of his own home. And you're coming to the conclusion, most probably, why is he praying 2 prayers? One is Shachrit and one is Musaf. But the Gemara shoots back. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe he prayed twice the same prayer. The first time he prayed, he realized he didn't pray proper kavanah. He said, I didn't really pray properly, and he redid it. Maybe that's why he was praying twice. Not that he prayed Musaf by himself. Shachrit, we said, there's no question you can pray Shachrit yourself. But the question is only about Musaf by yourself. You want to prove that he prayed Musaf by himself because he prayed 2 prayers? Maybe the second prayer wasn't Musaf. Maybe the second prayer was a redo of the Shachrit. So the Gemara says, look, even daitei. Maybe he didn't have proper kavanah in the first prayer. But the second prayer, and he had kavanah, and that's why he prayed the second prayer. So how can you prove your case? Amalei. The Rav Zera says to Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Zera says to Rav Yirmiyah, Chazei man gavra rabbah. Did you see the great rabbi? See who the great rabbi is who's giving that testimony? Who is the one who says, I saw Rav Yanai pray and repray? That was Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan said it. He didn't just speculate that he thought that the reason why the rabbi prayed in privacy 2 tefillot it was because one was shachrit and one was mutaf. It wasn't a speculation. If it was speculation, then Rabbi Yochanan would not have said a speculation. Rabbis don't generally speculate because you can't create law based on speculation. You can't say, I saw the rabbi pray twice. It shows you that he prayed Shachrit and Musaf, even by Yachid, even by himself. Obviously, Rabbi Yochanan knew he checked it, he found out, he made sure that his report was a very accurate report. A lot of times people report things that's not accurate, but this is an accurate report that the person was prayed shachrit, that Rav Yochanan was saying that Rav Yanai prayed shachrit, and he prayed musaf alone. So that proves the point that musaf could be done alone. Now you should know that a lot of times it depends on who is giving the report. Rabbi Yochanan, being a Gabba Rabbah, a great rabbi, he understands what's worthy. They say the New York Times, they used to say what news that's fit to print. They used to say that. I can't tell you today. But Rabbi Yochanan, who's a great man, understands when he makes the report, he's very exact and careful. There are a lot of, that's why the Gemara says you can rely on what he said. There are a lot of people that might make a report that might say something, but they might not have checked up well to recognize exactly what was the rabbi doing. Was it exact? Was it really shachrit and musaf or not? So that's what the Gemara is saying. He was someone that that you could trust, was very competent to understand, to check the facts properly. Now the Gemara continues. Rav Ami Ravasi. Rav Ami Ravasi. Af Agav. They had 13 synagogues in Tveria. In the city of Tveria, even today, Tveria in Eretz Yisrael, we know about the city of Tveria. So even though they had 13 synagogues in the city, but where did they pray? They prayed in the holiest place in the city, the Beit Midrash, the yeshiva. Lohavi mitzali elabeni amudei. They prayed between the pillars that held up the Beit Midrash. They had a special place. They wanted to pray connected to the pillars, underneath the pillars that held the Beit Midrash. Some say, we know there's, sometimes, where you learn, some want to say the spot where you learn is very holy, and they were careful to pray in the place that they used to actually learn, and that was the place that they learned. That's how Madonna Yom Tov says that why did the Gemara say that they prayed between the pillars? Because that's where they learned, and that spot is very special, very, very special. So, just like we say in Halacha, that you're supposed to have a special place where you daven when you're praying. Every time you come to synagogue, you shouldn't be going to another spot in the synagogue. You're supposed to designate a spot, try to pray and have a designated spot. Similarly, in your house. If a person ever needs to pray by himself in his house, he's supposed to have a designated spot. Give honor. This is my spot. This is where you pray. So that's so he says that even though there were 13 synagogues, they only prayed between the pillars. The spot where they learned. That's how some want to emphasize. Not just the Beit Midrash is the place where they learned. Actual spot where they learned, that's where they prayed. Meaning they prayed, and they even prayed alone. They even prayed biyachid. They prayed without a minyan. Now, the obvious question is, why would you pray without a minyan in the Beit Midrash? Maybe the Beit Midrash is a holy place, but still, you're missing out of minyan. So obviously, we have to. Maybe tomorrow we'll try to get some answers to that question, because we will say you should definitely pray in a synagogue with a minyan than pray in a Beit Midrash without a minyan. It could be that these people were very unique, that they studied Torah the whole day and they were on a certain level and so on and so forth. That Torah was a munatam, and maybe therefore they did not leave to go to the minyan. But it's not for the average individual such a thing. So and they prayed in the synagogue, they prayed in their Beit Midrash. And what did they pray? They prayed Shachrit, a Shabbat morning. Shachrit and Musaf. Even though there was a minyan in the city, there were many minyanim in the city. They still pray Shachrit and Musaf alone. So we see from here that you could pray Musaf alone. That's what we see from here. A person has the right to pray Musaf alone, meaning if you're not at a minyan, you still will be obligated to pray Musaf, and the Chazan of the synagogue does not cover you. That's what the Gemara says. Itma, and the Gemara continues and says, Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi mishum Rabbeinu. Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi in the name of Rabbeinu. Who's Rabbeinu? Rashi says that's Rav. Rav Yitzchak said the name of Rav. Halacha Rav Yehuda mishum she'ama mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He also says the halacha is like Rav Yehuda. That's in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And if there's a minyan in town, your house, the Chazan covers you for Musaf, according to this opinion. I say, well, that's not the halacha, but that's what he says. Rav Chia bar Abba Sali v'Hadid Sali. Rav Chia bar Abba, he prayed one time on Rosh Chodesh. He prayed and then he prayed again. He prayed he prayed twice, 2 in a row. And the Gemara wants to know why did he pray? Why did he pray twice? Why did he repeat the Shema Esrei? Why did he repeat the Amidah? Let's get some information on this story. Amalei Rav Zera, my timer of it marhachi. So Rav Zera, this is the way to go in life. When you see a rabbi, you see a chacham do something, talk to him about it. Ask him, be inquisitive. Ask him about it to explain to you what's behind it. You know, that's why we have the Mishnah. The Mishnah is the law, and then you have the Gemara, which is the reasons to explain the Mishnah. You need to understand why the rabbi did it. You can learn from it. So Rav Zera says to Rav Chia, my time Ovid Mar, refers to him as master with respect. My time Ovid Marachi. Why did you pray a second prayer? Ilema mishum de lo kivein mar daidei. Is it because if it would be because you did not have kavanah when you prayed the first time you prayed, you didn't have kavanah? Could that be the case? V'omar Rabbi Elazar, but we know Rabbi Elazar says, La'olam yamod odom et atzmo. A person should measure himself before you pray. You should measure yourself. What do you mean you measure yourself? You see, what do you measure? If you could go ahead and have kavanah, if you're able to, you're in your mindset, you're in the right mindset, you have clarity of mind, then you could just get rid of all the distractions that are on your mind. Yispalel. If you're able to go ahead and have kavanah, then you should pray. V'im lav, and if not, al yispalel. And if not, you should not pray. And definitely you're familiar with this law. And if you're familiar with this law, then if you pray the first prayer, it has to be you had kavanah, because you would not have prayed without having proper mindset, without being focused and having kavanah, proper intent. Ella, you know what most probably happened? It was Rosh Chodesh. Maybe Ella de lo ad kamav dereishacha. Is it because you did not mention Ya'aleh v'yavo? Is that the reason? Because you didn't mention Ya'aleh v'yavo? And you know, if you didn't mention Ya'aleh v'yavo, you have to repeat the Amidah. Person doesn't say Ya'aleh v'yavo at Shachrit or Mincha of Rosh Chodesh. You have to repeat the Shema Esrei. Is that what happened? Is that why you repeated the Amidah? Because you forgot Ya'aleh v'yavo? Vatanya, we learned in a Braita. This Braita says if you did not mention Ya'aleh v'yavo of Rosh Chodesh in the evening, ein machzirin oto. You do not repeat the Amidah. If a person forgets Ya'aleh v'yavo at the night of Rosh Chodesh, you don't repeat the Amidah. And that, by the way, is halacha l'maaseh. Rosh Chodesh by Arvit, only by Arvit of Rosh Chodesh. Only by the Ma'ariv of Rosh Chodesh. If you forgot Ya'aleh v'yavo, you do not repeat the Amidah. Now, but this Braita also says, differently than the halacha, by the way, the Braita says, why don't I have to repeat the Arvit if I forgot Rosh Chodesh and Arvit? Because if tonight is Rosh Chodesh, if I did not say Ya'aleh V'yavo tonight, I could say it tomorrow morning when I pray Shachrit in the morning. I'll mention Ya'aleh V'yavo in the Shachrit. That's the reason for that, according to this. And the reason, by the way, the reason why we say if you forget Ya'aleh V'yavo and Arvit in Ma'ariv, you do not repeat the Amidah, is not because you're going to mention Ya'aleh V'yavo in the morning prayers in Shachrit, rather because the court, the Beis Din, did not sanctify the new moon at night. When did they clear Rosh Chodesh? By day. So therefore, the official proclamation never came to the daytime. So therefore, you don't need, if you forgot Ya'aleh V'yavo let's say if today would have been Rosh Chodesh, when would they proclaim today Rosh Chodesh? Today at AM hours, or AM or afternoon hours, during daylight hours. But they would not sanctify, and then you would say retroactively last night was also Rosh Chodesh. But not last night they would not proclaim it Rosh Chodesh. So since they would not proclaim Rosh Chodesh, therefore the recital of Ya'aleh V'yavo, which is a proclamation, a recognition, a saying of Ya'aleh V'yavo, technically, if you didn't say it last night, if last night was Rosh Chodesh, since the court even never would have proclaimed it anyways from that time, they never would proclaim it, make it public the night before. Therefore, if you didn't say it at night, you will not repeat the Ma'ariv, the Arvit. However, you should know when it comes to Chol Hamoed, before you know what is Chol Hamoed Pesach, Chol Hamoed Pesach doesn't have to do with the Kiddush Levana. If you forgot Ya'aleh V'yavo in Chol Hamoed Pesach, whether it's Shachrit, whether it was Mincha, or whether it was Arvit, you have to repeat the Amidah. If you have to repeat the Shmoneh Esrei, if you forgot Ya'aleh V'yavo in the prayers of Shachrit, Mincha, or even Arvit when it comes to Chol Hamoed. The difference is regarding Rosh Chodesh is where we don't repeat at night. If you forgot at night, whether it's a one-night Rosh Chodesh or a two-night Rosh Chodesh, or with a two-day Rosh Chodesh, both the first night of Rosh Chodesh and the second night of Rosh Chodesh, if you forgot Ya'aleh V'yavo, you will not repeat if you forgot in the Arvit. So, but this opinion says, Toiv v'lo hiskia, this Brisa has it differently. Toiv v'lo hiskia shel Rosh Chodesh ba'Arvit. If you didn't mention Rosh Chodesh in Arvit, you did not repeat the Amidah. Because you can mention it in the Shachrit. Shachrit, if you forgot Ya'aleh V'yavo in the morning, this Brisa says you don't repeat the Amidah. We do not hold this way. And why? Because you're going to proclaim, you're going to talk about, you're going to mention Rosh Chodesh, where, if I missed it in Shachrit, I'll mention it in Musaf. I'll talk about the Kabbanot of Rosh Chodesh in Musaf. The Musafim, and this Brisa says if I didn't mention, if I in Musaf, instead of praying the normal Musaf, I prayed a mincha, a regular weekday prayer. For instead of Musaf, I said Atachone Lanam Dat. I said a regular weekday prayer instead of Musaf. I don't have to repeat Musaf according to this opinion. Because I could say it in Mincha. I'll mention Rosh Chodesh as long, this opinion says, as long as you're going to mention Rosh Chodesh, I don't care if you missed it in Shachrit, Mincha, I mean Musaf, you have Mincha. You have Mincha to help you out. Mincha. Omar Lei. So Rav Chia tells Rav Zera, so Rav Chia says back to Rav Zera, you're wondering why I repeated Amidah. And you're saying it can't be because I forgot Ya'aleh V'yavo. Because if I missed Ya'aleh V'yavo in the morning, you said I will not have to, if I missed it by Shachrit, I don't have to repeat it because I'm going to say it in Musaf. I will not have to repeat the Amidah. So you're wondering why I repeated the Amidah. Why did I do the Amidah twice? Omar. So he told it back, Omar Lei. Lav itma, Rav Chia says Rav Zera, Lav itma Allah, Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Tzibur Shanu. This was talking about a tzibur. A tzibur. When do we say that you do not have to repeat? You hear it from the Chazan. According to Rashi's first pshat, is since you're you're davening with the Chazan, and you don't have to repeat the Amidah because you heard if you're praying with the minyan and you're going to hear it from the Chazan. So then you don't have to repeat the shachrit. You don't have to repeat the mincha, the shachrit. You don't have to repeat. But if you're going to go ahead and when you're not praying with the minyan, and as the Rabbi Rav Chia was not praying with the minyan, so since he was not praying with the minyan, therefore he did not hear from a Chazan, and therefore, since he did not hear from the Chazan, therefore he needs to repeat the Amidah. And the way others explain the Gemara a little differently. They say that this Braita is referring to the Shliach Tzibur, the Chazan. If the Chazan forgot to mention Ya'ala v'Yavo, we don't tell him to repeat the Amidah because it'll take time from the community. Because the Kol HaTircha Tzibura. If he, the Chazan, that's how the Bahag explains. Rashi brings the Baal Hilchot Gedolot. And if the Chazan forgot Ya'ala v'Yavo at Arvit, he doesn't have to repeat the Arvit or forget the Shachrit because since he'll say it in the next prayer, so therefore he doesn't have to repeat it because if he's going to have to repeat it, it's going to take an extra time for the community. But the guy who's praying by himself, then it's not a question of causing extra time for the minyan. We say, look to Yosef's daughter. It's not causing extra time for the minyan. So therefore, if the guy forgets Ya'ala v'Yavo at Shachrit or Mincha, and he's praying by himself, he will go ahead and repeat the Amidah. But since he was, and that's what the rabbi is saying, since I was praying by myself, I have to repeat the Amidah. I was not a Chazan in the synagogue, and that's why I repeated the Amidah. We will again. It's also another thing we see.
But Rabbi, you repeat only if you finish the Amidah and you remember that you forgot, right?
Right. If you didn't take the 3 steps back yet, or if you didn't finish Yilerotzen and Refi towards the end of Amidah, and you caught yourself in Modim, you caught Al Kulam, you go back to Ritzeh. Right? If you're in the middle of a Sim Shalom Tov of Racha, and say, I didn't say Ya'ala v'Yavo on Shachrit. Or by Mincha, I go back to Ritzeh and I go straight from Ritzeh.
Yeah.
If at night of Rosh Chodesh, once I finish once I started Modim, I will not go back. I won't go back to.
And that's if you're in Minyan, okay, you don't have to repeat.
So we hold
because you have the Chazara, you can hear it.
So that's a good question. That the Rishonim talk about, because I think some might want to. There are those that say that if you're at a minyan, you might be able to listen to the Chazan, but many say you shouldn't do that because it's very hard to focus your attention, to focus on every word that the Chazan says. And I think therefore most probably it would be better. I would say maybe we could look that up, but I would say it's better to repeat it yourself. Repeat. If you went to minyan on Shachrit, or even if you're at a minyan and you miss Ya'ala v'Yavo on Shachrit on Rosh Chodesh, I would say you should still, even though there's a Chazan is going to say it, I would still suggest that you should repeat it yourself because it's very hard to focus on. Our attention span is very small today, and it's very hard.
Yeah, but what if you missed and you realize you missed and you go to stand by the Chazan? And you really need to hear the Ya'ala v'Yavo, which is basically less than 1 minute. You don't have to repeat all the Amidah. You don't have to attention all the Amidah. You have to wait, for the part of the Ya'ala v'Yavo. So once you hear the the Chazan says Retzeh, you going and standing next to him, and you just like, you have a moment of focus.
Yeah, but it's not enough. The point is, if you miss the Aleph Yavo, the point is you need to repeat the whole Amidah. So it's not enough just to listen to the Chazan say the Aleph Yavo. Good morning, Akiva. Shalom Aleichem. We welcome Akiva from Africa.
Sorry for coming late.
No problem. We'll take you anytime, Akiva. So Yosef, it's not enough just to listen to the Aleph Yavo from the Chazan. You have to go ahead and listen to every word from because once you miss the Aleph Yavo, you have to repeat the whole Amidah. So now it's not enough just to listen to Chazan say Aleph Yavo. You have to have for the whole thing. Tosfot, by the way, Yosef, on Tosfot on Chav Tet Amud Beis, you welcome Akiva. I see there's Akiva. Yeah, and there's a different Akiva twice. The Tosfot on Chav Tet Amud Beis says the following: if a person did not mention Rosh Chodesh in the Amidah, in the Amidah, he says the Behilchos Gedolo says that if you're with a minyan, you could just listen to the Chazan, like you said, Yosef. But he says you have to be careful to hear from the Chazan every letter of the Tefillah. So therefore, I believe it's very hard today to have that focus. So therefore, I would go ahead. He says you have to hear every letter of the Tefillah. So therefore, I would go ahead and I would just repeat it. I wouldn't just rely on listening to the Chazan, but it needs to be researched also a little more about that. But that's what I would do personally, and I said many people would do. Okay, I want to wish everyone a great day. We went a little overtime, and we welcome Denise for joining for today's class, and all the best in the Neshama Shav and Aliyah, and the Neshama of Shoshana Sarah Bat Avraham. All the best. Have a great day, everybody.
Have a good day, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Hey, Yosef, I have a question for you. Rabbi,
Yes.
do you know Apple Watch?
What'd you say?
Apple Watch.
I can't hear you clearly.
Apple
What's
Watch.
it called?
I don't know. Have you got this? Okay, case. You know anything about Apple Watch, right? Apple Watch.
Oh, Apple Watch. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not so familiar with it, but what?
That's all I was trying to find out from Yosef. For he might know. Is it kosher?
Apple Watch is it kosher? What's
During Shabbat.
For Shabbat, you're saying?
Yes.
No. What is it? It has all these things, all these gadgets. What? The things that make noises and all these things. What? What was that? He also I have some here, Mr. Gutterman, right? What's your first name? Yitzhak is saying that it also monitors the person's heartbeat. He says it's a lot going on. He says I'm not familiar with it, but he says there's a lot going on, and he said he doesn't think it's a good idea. He doesn't think it's. I could ask someone about it. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
But I presume it's like a computer also, right? You do. I mean, it's like a computer. I mean, I don't believe you should have a computer on you on Shabbos. You know what I'm saying? I don't believe a person should be wearing that type of thing. I don't. That's what I would think. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It's a very weekday. It's a very weekday type of item. Connected to the whole world. And Yitzhak says it's very important on Shabbat that we need to disconnect from all those things of the. Shabbat is a day of resting up from all those. It's good to disconnect. But I'm saying I think it's a very weekday type of thing. It's used generally to people are constantly pressing buttons on it on a regular basis, right? So it's like a computer, right? It's like people get their emails to it, right? Correct? Yes. So it's like a computer. So therefore, it shouldn't be worn on Shabbat.
Okay. But on Shabbat you can turn those functions off. That's the fact. Those functions are not displayed. But like the email side doesn't necessarily is on because your phone is turned off. It's connected to a phone, But if the phone is turned off, you don't get those information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. But the fact that it's a utensil that it's generally used in that fashion, so therefore we shouldn't wear it on Shabbat because the whole week it's used in that fashion. Even though you turn it off for Shabbat, the fact that it's made generally to use in such a fashion, so I would say we should not use it on Shabbat.
Okay, Rabbi. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.